when we think about why we do training and communication, fundamentally, it is because it is one of the most effective and efficient controls that we have access to in ethics and compliance. It is one of the most effective and efficient risk mitigation tactics that we can employ, because at the end of the day, and they said this on the main stage here at GES this week, which is, it's really about people. We need people, the employees within our company, to understand where there's risk, how those risks manifest themselves within our business, and then what they can do to either mitigate that risk, manage that risk, or identify and flag that risk to us.
Yeah, so when I think about communications principles, I think about comms as kind of an art in and of itself. I mean, we have separate comms departments, and people have professions in this field, and I think there's a lot we can learn and incorporate in the way that we communicate training and ethics and compliance principles. So what I've learned and some of what I try to incorporate are, I think, first and foremost, to think about the voice and the tone that you're using to communicate. So the first question is, who's going to be sending the message in the first place? Is it the CEO? Is it the chief people officer? Is it chief compliance officer? Is someone else entirely? But for each of those, there's kind of an underlying message that's sort of intrinsically sent when you send it from a particular person, and that go along with that message being sent from them. So that's part of it. Another piece is, do you have a casual, approachable style or a more formal, mandatory style? Are you using abbreviations and contractions in the communication that you're using? I think even the difference between can't and cannot makes a big difference in tone in the way that you're communicating. Are you finding opportunities to include humor if it's appropriate, or to keep the tone a little lighter in that way? Are you being transparent about what the employee will be learning and why it's important that they're learning it? I like to avoid words like mandatory and required whenever possible. And instead, I like to talk about how the training is relevant and interesting. I think it's also important to take the opportunity to emphasize the company's mission and values, and you can tie the training back into that as much as possible. I think you want people to feel motivated to do the training and understand why it's important. And here I think you can think about change management principles and influencing behavior and culture. So again, we can draw from our comms colleagues as well as change management colleagues and colleagues in HR to think about how we're communicating and influencing behavior.
I think that maybe we can think of the compliance officer almost like an influencer that has to viralize their message and keep people interested. So at the beginning, it may be easier to deliver the message effectively, but inevitably, as time goes by, people lose their interest and involvement. So I think that it would be a really good advice to choose at least 2 or 3 concepts to communicate throughout the year. Obviously, there are some topics that are essential and have to be constantly repeated, like Aaron said, the corporate values or the use of the hotline, and of course, the guarantee that there won't be any retaliation for the person that raises a report in good faith. But with the rest of elements, I think we can divide and plan their communication throughout the year, so it's easier to assess the effectiveness of each campaign. So I think that in the end, creativity, repetition, and presentation are essential to keep people interested in the training program. Maybe it could be another advice to keep messages obviously short, concise, and if possible, include them in trainings held on by other departments. So for example, HR has a training for every new employee. Maybe you could get there a simple message about compliance or the elements you want to communicate that year. So I think that could be like a better way, coordinating trainings with other areas and include compliance messages.
You're going to talk about even measuring that culture within your organization and maybe not focusing on the training or the comms, but the culture.
Yeah. We've deployed ethical culture surveys here at Snap, and I think they're an excellent way to get, behind the hood and see, do people understand, right, where they should go for the policies? Do they believe that, their leaders are upholding the values of the company? So in addition to, gauging the effectiveness of your communications or training via just the information, you can test how healthy is the culture, right? I also think, just to add on to what Erin was saying, another really good place to go for information is your investigations. It may be, from an employment legal standpoint, if someone, I didn't know that the policy said that, might not get someone out of trouble. But as a compliance professional, it's a very good indicator that maybe you should make the policies a bit clearer. So I think having less people say, or being able to say, I didn't understand that, and have that be a convincing answer is a very good place for you to bookmark whether or not what you're doing is effective.
Love it. Listen, and I also, for anyone who's struggling with completion rates within their organization, I suggest you measure those trends. Where do people not complete it? Why? Do a root cause analysis there. I think root cause analysis on a lot of metrics, understanding the why behind some of those metrics can give you some cultural indicators that, you may have a problem you're not necessarily aware of fear, of retaliation, or of otherwise. So look at all of your available information to really do a root cause as to why. And then I think, as everyone said, kind of what can you do differently or better.